Welcome, students of Business 241 at MCC College, Community College. We are in the very last week. We are in the home stretch of this class when we take on the topic of corporations, which will be the purpose of this lecture today. And we've seen little hints about the work we're going to do this week and the assignments, which are 3. We have a quiz over the chapters, and in some of the earlier editions of Anderson and Toomey's Legal Environment of Business, they break down chapters 41, 42, 43, and 44 into 4 different kinds of corporations. If you've purchased the online notebook edition or the loose leaf edition, all of those chapters 41 through 44 are compressed into one chapter. So we will be having you read those chapters or chapter and take the quiz. We will also have you file your own Secretary of State forms as if you were setting up a corporation. And by filing it, I mean you don't pay a fee. You just actually download them and send them in to me. You don't send them actually into the Secretary of State unless you're one of those students who would like to make themselves into a corporation. And we will also be using your domain name work that we executed in our IP week. And just starting out a little bit about corporations. As you know from our earlier lectures, corporations were not a legal vehicle until we got into the 19th, 20th century here in America. And they've certainly become more sophisticated creatures over the last 20 or 30 years. There are various forms of corporations. I've got their abbreviations up here, but let's just start out at the basic unit of running a business, and that could be a solo proprietorship. That's just you, it's just your business. Proprietorship. That's the basic unit. Then we launched in America into corporations. The Business Corporations Act is under the Illinois Secretary of State Materials. We also call that the BCA. Many years after those 2 forms of entities were in existence, we went into partnerships or limited partnerships, LLPs. And they have their own forms under the Secretary of State's website. And the final form, the one that is most popular, is the Limited Liability Corporation. Those are S Corps and C Corps. They differ for tax purposes. And you will note, if you have been following along this semester, I could be a solo proprietorship because I'm a one-person company. I am a business. However, I have PC, Professional Corporation, tacked onto the end of my name of my business, and therefore I am an LLC. If you went onto the Secretary of State's website, you could look me up. You could also look me up under the domain searches under the Secretary of State's website under that legal name. So a little bit about these. I've asked you to consider, for the fictitious business you're creating this semester, what kind of business you want to be in. And some of you have told me that you'd like to make cupcakes with your sister and sell them. And by its very nature, just suggesting that you and your sister want to make and sell cupcakes, unless you convert your sister into your employee, you two might be considering being a partnership because there's 2 of you. And that would mean you share in the responsibilities and the profits of the business. We have limited partners and general partners that have different responsibilities and expectations, or we have equal partners. All of which are defined by the partnership agreement that you write up with your sister. But that is one form of business entity. The partnership and anything beyond a solo offers the advantage that if the solo passes away, perhaps the business goes away. If you have somebody other than yourself, you have somebody to cover you when you're on vacation. You have someone to share liabilities, responsibilities, and profits with. Other than that, the limited liability partnership and the limited liability corporation can be small. They can be one person too, as you just saw me say. My professional corporation, which is an LLC, is a one-person corporation. But what incorporating myself does is it protects me from being sued personally or individually. The shell of my corporation surrounds me so that my house can't be taken if someone is unhappy with provision of my legal services to them. A bigger corporation that issues stock under the BCA offers that same shell, that same shield, that same corporate veil as the LLC and the LLP. It's just much bigger and oftentimes sells shares of stock or sells interest in the corporation to people that want to help support the endeavor going forward. That would be in probably an Amazon-like adventure, a Microsoft adventure. Those are bigger corporations. We do also have not-for-profits that are corporations. Oftentimes schools are private and they are not-for-profit, but they are still incorporated. And there are special tax numbers that apply to the not-for-profits. The YMCA, the Catholic Church, they might be not-for-profit corporations. So there's sort of a blush of the various kinds of business entities. Your first decision is going to be to make an evaluation as to, am I going to sell shares of stock into my company? Then I'll be a bigger form of corporation. Or am I going to be someone who's incorporated strictly for shielding myself from liability and for tax purposes? So that will help you decide what you want to do with your business venture. Your snow plowing company, your babysitting corporation, your social media business that you have. But your first decision for the purposes of this week and this unit is what you've been thinking about all along. If you're going to be selling martial arts services, should you have a corporation? If you're going to be a massage therapist, which one of these works out best given who you are and who you want to be in business with and who you want to share the liability, the responsibility with, and in addition, share the profits. So hopefully you've gone and thought this through and thought which of the many kinds of corporate organizations in Illinois I might be interested in. Keeping that in the back of your mind, you want to also think about where your financials are in all of this. You may not be able to pull this off by yourself, in which case people also do things like joint ventures. You may need money or a product in order to make your business happen. And I'll give you an example of that. I once thought it would be a great idea, and it was actually my kindergarten son's idea, to have something he called Razz Up, raspberry syrup in a bit of Sprite. And he would sell this drink called a Razz Up. This was an upgrade on the typical old-fashioned lemonade stand for sure. But I pointed out to him that he really couldn't sell it commercially or on the open market because the raspberry syrup he wanted to use and the Sprite that he wanted to use, and it belonged to two other companies. So he would have to go into business with the 7-Up distributors and the manufacturers and also the raspberry syrup folks in order to do a joint venture, because in that case, Joe needed product. You may also need dollars to get started, and that's why you get into a joint venture. You may want to be a TCBY yogurt ice cream distributor in that case, or you might want to be a McDonald's proprietor or a Hooters franchise. You will set up a franchise agreement. Those are other additional forms of corporate entities, but for the purpose of this class this week, I want you to look at the basic ones and decide which one you want to be, because we're not worried about your money situation or actually getting the products for this class exercise. Having said that, you can also have a cooperative type of venture, and people probably understand cooperatives most likely with housing or specific organic farming, and that's another entity that we won't really be discussing in class here today. We will be discussing, for the purposes of your assignment, that you have to go get 2 types of forms that are listed on the board over there, and they have to fit and be tailored to which of the business entity types that you're going to be. So start out with, we talked about in the IP week, engaging in, and you got 20 points of credit for setting up your domain name. Your domain name involves searching in that particular assignment, and if you haven't done it yet, I'm reminding you, 3 sites. I told you to look on the Secretary of State site. I told you to look on register.com and GoDaddy.com or any other similar site, and check your name out and see if it's still available. If you were to go check my name out, it's no longer available because I took it. I am not asking you to spend the money to actually reserve your name. I've asked you to write me a memo telling me, is the name Mary C. Ambrose Durack available? And the answer is not anymore because I have it. And if so, what is that person doing? If you need to put a middle initial in, or you need to you abbreviate your first name so that you can find one that you can actually fill out the forms for that's legitimate in Illinois, then you need to do that. So you're going to take your domain name, you're going to go to the Secretary of State's website, and the first form that you're going to fill out is the name form for your company. And you're going to find that the forms are different. When you want to find and register your name, you're going to look under, say you took the LLC, you're going to look under the LLC name forms, and they're going to download that form for the LLC, and you're going to fill it out. I think it's 1.5 in the LLCs. If you were to choose it for a big corporation, you're looking in the BCAs, the name form, I believe, is 2.1. So you'll fill out your name first, and then after you've made sure you know what kind of business you want to be, and you've picked out your name, we're going to move into actually doing the Articles of Incorporation to set up your company. Again, only taking those forms off the website from the Secretary of State here in Illinois, and they actually have an icon that says Business Services Forms. If you're having difficulty finding them, you can take that next step in adulting, which is to call the Secretary of State's office and ask them where the form is if you can't find it. But you're going to come up with the Articles of Incorporation. Again, depending on which one of these main businesses you took, the BCA, the LLC, the LLP, the solo, the not-for-profit, you will actually find that they have Articles of Incorporation that are different, and they're different numbered. The LLC's Articles of Incorporation, I think, are 5.1. And you'll find the BCA's form as well. So after you have that, you'll start filling out the Articles of Incorporation. That will ask you, who are the officers? Where is the company located? What is its address? It will also ask you if you have any shares of stock, and you can put down as little as $100 worth of stock fees, or you can put down more if you decide to sell shares of stock to your father, mother, sister, brother. You can, and you will put that on the chart that they give you on the form. You will put down what is the business purpose. The business purpose will be something like, my business purpose is to provide legal services and counseling to Illinois clients. Perhaps if you're setting up your martial arts business, it'll be to provide classes in martial arts to students from kindergarten through high school. And that will be your business purpose clause. When you have filled out that form and you have signed it, it will probably require a notary. Those of you who went ahead and got your notary in this class are going to get extra credit for that. They can notarize forms for their other classmates, or I can. Then you're going to upload your Articles of Incorporation and submit that and your domain name form along with your quiz, and you will have successfully taken the steps that you need to complete your corporation's assignment for this week. I'm going to review with you again some of the advantages and disadvantages for the purpose of the quiz. If you are an individual proprietorship, you have no organizational fees, you get to make all the decisions, you are the boss. You do get all the profits and losses flowing to you, but you also get to go with a personal tax rate. There is, however, that unlimited liability and a real problem if you die or get disabled. The other forms of entities in the middle, their advantages are you get pooled resources in all three of them. You get flow through of income and write-offs in all three. However, there's unlimited liability, and again, if you're in a partnership, the death of one of the partners could dissolve it, and it's also difficult to transfer to other people. A big corporation has the ease of perpetual life, transfer of ownership, and also limited liability. But it does have double taxation, so you need to factor that in when you're doing your profit and loss assessment. The not-for-profits have no legal existence, but they are, and they can also have some liability, which oftentimes people forget to get insurance for that. And the franchises come with lengthy franchise agreements that you will not want to have a lawyer review with you before you enter those kinds of businesses. And we have lots of debate with the McCain law as to whether or not a corporation can actually, and this went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, have a political presence or make donations. And you need to follow through on checking out that case before you go on and take the quiz in this class. That would conclude our lecture on corporations and also conclude our course Business 241. I want to tell you that after 12 years of being here, I have entrepreneurs that have successfully set up small, medium, and large companies, movie industry, spaghetti sauce, needlepoint, and all of them have found that a very happy home, having done their homework first and figured out not only what form of entity that they would want to set up, but also using the correct forms. I am providing online a list of the steps that you need that are beyond this and would be more advanced, like getting your FEIN number and some other registrations that you would need to know. So you want to probably take a look at that chart and the steps that I hand out to all my clients about how to become a corporation in Illinois. It's about this big, and it's got many boxes that tell you who to contact, what website, what links, what fees are involved, so you can get a handle on it if you're actually considering being a corporation in Illinois. And I hope that all of you realize that it doesn't require a law degree to do this. You can set yourself up on your own. A lot of people go in and I find are poor consumers of the service providers in McHenry County and Lake County, and they end up paying people $3,000 or $4,000 to do it. The purpose of this business course objective is to show you that you can do it all yourself. And after you finish your homework for this week, you will have done it all yourself.